put business and geography together, but it is particularly pertinent to cultural geography because a lot of what we're going to be talking about in this class is going to be sort of the economic side of things, which will help whenever you're a senior and you're ready to take economics. But what we'll essentially be going over is business, so different industries and things like that, based out of different countries, and the sort of the way the different countries' economies work. So let's get a couple of business terms out of the way. Per capita GDP, or gross domestic product, is how much money a country produces per person living in that country. So say that you live in a country that produces $150 million worth of stuff every year. Your total economy produces so much stuff, stuff that would be valued on the market at $150, or $150 million. Okay, and so you have 5 million people living in that country. Your per capita GDP would be $30. It would be $30 per capita. Okay, so your per capita GDP is the amount of stuff you produce in an economy. So the total value of all the things produced in an economy divided by the number of people living in that economy. The United States has, as of right now, the highest, I believe, per capita GDP of any country on earth. And so even though our economy isn't doing so well right now, we are doing better than most other countries. Okay, this is important because we're going to use it to compare the strength of the economies of different countries. So the higher your per capita GDP is, the stronger your economy is. Okay, so just remember that. If you have any questions about that, let me know. Okay. A subsistence economy is an economy in which people just create things that they need to live. Subsistence means survive, and so essentially, in a subsistence economy, you farm and herd and whatever for the things that you need for your family's food and clothing. Okay, there's not a lot of saving things or selling things or making money. Subsistence economies are in underdeveloped nations without strong economies, and it's just people doing the things that they need to get by, living on natural resources and producing things that they need to get by without really trading with other people so much. Okay. And then a commercial economy is the economy we live in, where people produce goods and services to sell. Okay, so we live in a commercial economy. Other nations also live in commercial economies, and we exchange commercial goods with them. But your parents are probably not farmers or craftsmen or women. They are more likely like they have a job, they get paid for that job, and they use that money to buy things from other people that they need to live. That's a commercial economy. In a subsistence economy, you make the things that you need to survive. In a commercial economy, you're buying and selling the goods that you want and need. And commercial economies are typically stronger than subsistence economies. This is really important because it provides a sort of like imaginary line between two parts of the world, the quote-unquote developed world and the quote-unquote developing world, where subsistence economies are still sort of common. Okay, so there are other types of economies that you have to understand, and these are important because they get into two main ideas that we'll talk about as being sort of like geographically competitive. The first is capitalism, and the second is communism. The way that capitalism and communism sort of compete is capitalism is typically a free market economy, meaning that people can go and buy and sell whatever they want whenever they want and make however much money. Whereas communism, the economy is controlled and regulated by the government. Communism is a very good example of a planned economy. The planned economy is an economy where the government is in charge of the things that are being bought, sold, and produced in an economy. The reason for this is so that they can try to regulate more closely the kinds of things that are being created, so that they can either better see to the needs of the people, or if the government is trying to produce a specific thing, then they'll plan the economy. So that is typically, when you think of a planned economy, you're going to think of communism, but there are cases of capitalist planned economies, but the government uses sort of different incentives to try to get that. But that's a little bit more complicated. What you need to understand, though, is that planned economies are sometimes tools used by countries in the developing world to sort of change the direction their country is going. So if you want to, we'll go back a slide real quick. If you want to move from the subsistence phase to this commercial economy, one of the things that you can do is use the planned economy, where you are overseeing the things that your people are making and selling, so that they can grow better. Okay, and then we need to talk about the idea of a global economy, and this is something I've already briefly mentioned, but that we interact with one another and we trade. That's really, really important and central to our understanding of geography. The global economy is the total amount of stuff produced on the planet, and then the exchanges that take place therein. So if someone is a banana farmer in Brazil, and then they sell those bananas to someone in Florida, who then distributes them and takes them to United States grocery stores, then that's part of a global economy. Okay, if those same bananas from Brazil get used to make banana jam, I don't think banana jam is a thing that exists, but we'll just go ahead and say for this, for the example that I'm trying to do here, that banana jam does exist. Say that someone jams their bananas and then they can it and then they ship it over to Europe. Okay, so there's the global economy again. You've got Brazilian bananas being jammed in the United States and then sold in France. Okay, that's Spain. That's France. There's France. Okay, another really good example of a global economy would be oil. Okay, so oil is oftentimes bought and sold in the Middle East. So Saudi Arabia is one of the most prominent countries. So we buy oil from Saudi Arabia, and it comes over to the United States. We turn it into gasoline. After we turn it into gasoline, we put it into our cars, which can be made in Korea or Japan or Mexico or a variety of other places. And so that is a really good example of a global economy as well. Foreign oil being used to power foreign cars in our home country. So when you think global economy, what I want you to really think about is exchange, crossing over geographic borders to exchange things for money. Okay, globalization is this idea that there is a rapid movement of goods, services, labor, technology, and capital around the world. This is kind of complicated in more economic stuff, but it is really important to understand. Globalization is the exchange across the world of all those things I was talking about, those products. It can also be exchanges of labor. So if you've ever had to call and you've gotten a call center in India, that's part of globalization. We're using call centers in India because they often provide cheaper and larger amounts of labor to support American products. So that's another really good example of globalization. Another example of globalization you might deal with that in your everyday life is if you ever encounter any immigrants from other countries, which I'm sure some of you do. And them coming to America is a form of globalization. They're coming from one place to another. That is really globalization as well. And it has helped, for the most part, developed countries. And we're going to talk about that. But it's given countries a lot of things that they didn't have before. And we will go ahead and I will go ahead and give you examples. I'll talk about globalization more as the class goes on. And so, but globalization has really sort of helped to pull some countries out. It has also hurt in some ways, so I don't want to make it sound like it's all good, because it is a very, very complicated thing. I think that what you'll find is that in social studies, things are often not simply good or bad; they're complicated. But globalization is definitely something that is going on. Okay, this is an overview of some of the stuff that we've talked about. Not the religion, because again I skipped that, but some sort of like just an overview of the last 3 videos that you've watched. This might help. So if I were you, I would probably jot this down and keep it for whenever you take the